Welcome to this episode of Sueltalo with Sardinas. Today's special guest is Salome Cuenca-Alfonso. She is an entrepreneur, my best friend, and overall probably the best person I've ever met in my whole entire life. So let's welcome her, Salome Cuenca-Alfonso. And we have known each other for how many years?
I think it is 17 years now, since we were 5.
Since we were 5, we met in kindergarten. The cutest meet cute of them all. Not really, honestly.
I know we kind of hated each other. No,
Yeah,
you hated. I hated you.
Literally.
I just didn't get you. It was very hard for me to get you. And
I was more bossy, I would say, and I was asked to help clean your desk.
you were asked, to be honest.
I was asked by an adult to clean your desk.
And then my mom se enganchó, and 3 days later was selling me into your family.
Yes. So my grandpa would take me to school every day and also pick me up. And that lasted maybe 2 weeks because then he started taking us both home every day in kindergarten. Which
My mom met this, thank God he turned out to be a huge creep.
Oh, yeah.
But my mom
thank
met
God.
this charming, very kind old man and literally was like,
She'll be okay. And then since then, we've had a lot of interesting and crazy experiences.
in
And that's
history.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were talking about before. We've seen each other go through different milestones, I would say. I think the biggest reason why I wanted to bring you onto this podcast is because a big thing that I want to highlight is, I would say, Hispanic women in power. And I feel like you're someone that I think is very powerful and
you.
empowering.
Thank you.
I want to touch upon that by asking you or having you tell the audience, what is it that you do and what is it that you're passionate about, just so they can get the idea of why I feel like you're the best guest for my first episode.
Oh my gosh, I feel so No, thank you. I'm honored. And I do work serving adults with intellectual disabilities. So I do have 2 jobs. I work at the WOW Center, which is an adult day training center for adults with developmental disabilities. And they focus on habilitation and life skills. And there I work as a supported employment job coach, helping them seek employment opportunities in the community. And then I also started my nonprofit, Pucho and Pals, recreational services. And that's exactly what it is. We're a recreational service to help develop these adults' social lives, because due to a lack of a lot of options and different challenges they face, it can be hard to be plugged in socially and make connections that many of us do. So we try to fill that gap.
And as a Cuban American living in Miami, how would you say your cultural background or your family influenced your approach to your newfound entrepreneurship?
Well, because my parents are Cubans, I feel like many Cubans, there's a strong sense of pride, and this feeling of having to make up, I guess, for lost time or others' missed opportunities, just because of the situation Cuba is in and has been the last 50, 70 years. Many people leave, and sometimes leave their families, and they have to, start from scratch here in the States. And that is what my parents had to do. They left their families. They came here very young by themselves, and they had to build themselves up from what, felt like nothing. And because of that, they're coming from a country where you have no options. It just makes the United States seem like everything is absolutely limitless and there's endless opportunity. And so with that mindset, they've always put on me, you have choices, you have to try, you have to make something of yourself. There is no such thing as a limit here.
And I would say that your dad is a pretty significant person in your life. And I mean that in both your career and kind of what he went through. So, I know you just brought up Cuba's situation and how for the past 67 years they've been going through communism. They don't have resources and necessities, yet the tourism is sometimes popping.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know the situation, so they think, oh, the pretty beaches,
yeah,
celebrities going there, it's fantastic, and it's actually not. So your father was part of something called Operation Pedro Pan, which in English translates to Peter Pan. So it's a significant event where over 14,000 Cuban children, they were sent to the U.S. between 1960 and 1962 in order to escape Fidel Castro's reign and the communism. So how has his journey impacted your views on resilience and family, and as well as your career, because of, I would say, I don't want to spoil this for everyone, but like essentially his mental illness as he got older?
Right. So he has a kind of crazy story. He did leave Cuba when he was 12, and he got on Peter Pan by himself. And when he arrived to New York, an aunt that had already left before him claimed him. He left his parents, he left his siblings and everything. He was as the oldest brother, he was the first one to come by himself.
Which, I don't mean to interrupt you, Salo, but there were a lot of cases, right, where children were sent to America without family members here, and they had to live with like foster homes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of them would get like molested or.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So luckily, your dad had, I guess, not the privilege, but because he still had to be separated from his family, which is a very terrible.
But in itself, there was a privilege in getting to see a familiar face and having someone receive him. So yeah, it has its misfortunes, but also its fortunes. And eventually, his parents and his brother were able to make it here. And again, my dad, being influenced by Cuban culture, loved music. He adored music, and it's funny what I think it is about Cuba. Because of the communism, there's just no sense of ownership, because as you can work as hard as you want, as little as you want, you'll still get paid the same. Mm-hmm. Your resources will still be rationed the same, no matter how much you need or don't need. Like, there's no sense of ownership whatsoever, because every factor of your life is controlled for you. So
would you say like music was his outlet?
Absolutely.
Your dad coming here and then making music, can you like describe his legacy and essentially like what he's done?
Again, in Cuba, you have a lot of African influence, because many slaves were transported to Cuba and they ended up settling there. So there's he particularly loved, and he kind of helped develop the genre of charanga, which is salsa music with heavy African influence and also European classical influence. So you get those big orchestras with bongos, with flutes, and like violins and all these amazing instrumentals. So that was his outlet. And again, because of that lack of ownership in Cuba, I think that just fueled him so much more when he got here to what felt like a land of opportunity, that he decided to pursue the music, and he started his band Charanga 76, Charanga 76. 76 because that was the year 1976. They formed the group, and in the year 76 they also had their first big hit, which was a copy of Willie Chirino's Soy, but just a lot more embellished, if you will. So it got real popular. And then him and his partner Hansel broke off onto their own duo, and then they've had a super successful career the last 50 years.
They have won Grammys.
They have
performed with Celia Cruz, I believe.
They have.
Which she's a Cuban icon.
Yeah.
And recently, didn't your dad and Hansel perform for Pitbull's birthday?
They did. They did.
So he's a fan of Hansel, you know.
He is. As a Cuban artist, he actually said that that was one of their influences.
All right.
Not to brag, but
not to brag. But okay, so I have an interesting question for you. So you said, you know, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to make your parents proud and kind of take advantage of the privileges you have being an American, being born in America. So if your company, Pucho and Pals, had a theme song, which one of your dad's hits would it be and why? I kind of have one in mind, but I don't want to say it until you say yours.
If Pucho and Pals had a theme song, Oh my God, if Pucho and Pals had a theme song.
So I guess for context, Salome, it was your birthday last weekend, right?
Yeah.
While you sit and process with that question, I'll give the audience some context of like how your work environment is so stimulating, but also very rewarding. So for your birthday, you wanted to spend it hosting a Valentine's soiree, you would call it, for your students. And we essentially had this like really beautiful party at your partner's house, and we were all just doing so many things. Like, it was just nonstop stimulation of like painting, making cookies, eating, talking, learning about each other, and then hearing all of your students' stories and how, in Spanish we say cariñoso, but they're so, in English that's like loving, like they're so loving and they just want to be your friend. And so I would say, if you don't mind me answering, I would say that the song for me that reminded me the most of your students and what you do was your dad's song Todo Mundo con la lengua fuera, because I feel like that song, that is how we were at the end of the day. So in English, that song translates to everybody with their tongue out, because I was exhausted. I had so much fun, but it was so like, and it was so rewarding, but I was so tired.
Yeah.
It was like playing your job. You get to essentially like play. You get to play and you get to like really appreciate life, and kind of you show that to your students when you like take them out and do things that anybody can do, because that's the point of it, right? Like they can do anything, if not better, if not just as good as anyone else. So that's really what it felt like, but it was fantastic.
So it is funny you say that, and that's actually that's actually a good. I did figure you were gonna say that, and that's a really good one.
But
actually,
it's an outsider's perspective. You have a deeper understanding, I guess, of like.
I do, but actually, I mean, both were good. That's a good song because that song is about like it's just very hyper, and it's about like this beautiful girl passing, and he's so hyped up. He's like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass out. Oh my God, like somebody call an ambulance. I can't do this, and it's a funny song, but it does encompass like. You're having fun and you're laughing, but you're running. You are gonna pass out. Like, it's intense. So that's definitely a good one. I was gonna say he has a song called Cosas Mías. It's an older song. Yours is like more fun. This song is like, it kind of gives Beatles vibes, and they were like very influenced by the Beatles, low-key. It's a cute song. It wasn't a big one, but it literally means like things of mine, like little quirks, if you will. And the whole song, they're just saying how they know their perfections and their imperfections, and they do exactly whatever they want. They are absolutely unapologetically themselves. It doesn't matter, and they are not shy about anything.
Or like when, so one of your students, Salo, her name is Anais.
Oh my God, yes.
So you and I were having a conversation, and she walked up to us, like dancing and screaming, and she goes, beaches! And I thought she was like saying like bitches. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, girl. But then it was not that she was, it was that you have me under your contact as peaches. She came up to me dancing, like we were like, as if I've known her for years, and that was like the first time I met her, or maybe the second. No, it was the first time, because when I went with you to FIU, I don't think she was.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't.
So the first time I meet her, and she's coming to welcome me in a way that I was like, okay, I guess we're besties now. And I thought she was just saying bitches, but no, she was saying beaches. And I was like, oh, girl, yeah, okay, that makes more sense.
No, yes, they literally have like an incredible capacity. Any story you tell them, or anyone with enough detail and enough passion, like they will ingrain it in their memory, like that's someone they know, and it becomes a part of their life. And I have to say, like, I've asked people about my dog, and every time they see me, I'll be like, but how's your dog? Does she still bite? Does she still roll when you take her out to the grass? Does she still chase lizards? And I'm like, you never met my dog. But they just remember those things. So, of course, and I'm like obsessed with you, so I talk about you a lot. And also, like, she, like, shamelessly goes through my phone just because she's bored. And yeah, she sees that you're peaches, and she asks me, so I did tell her about you. She didn't walk up to you like that.
Ever since you were younger, did you always know you wanted to pursue this type of career, or was it like a newfound passion?
So yeah, so I actually, not a newfound passion, but I consider it like an uncovered passion, because so the other side of that coin, what we were talking about earlier, my dad is like I think he does have a lot of trauma from coming here and things he had to face and deal with and the industry he was in. And a lot of that poured into abusing alcohol and drugs.
Mhm.
And so, with already some emotional issues, and then you're adding these substances on top of it, does not help. And then in 2001, he did have a car accident, and it left him with a traumatic brain injury and a couple physical disabilities as well. So all this combination of things really, what else can I say? He's disabled. He is disabled now, and I think he has his brain injury, which already on its own does impair your mind and a lot of your emotions, but he also has, I guess, trauma on his body, if you will, from the drugs and the alcohol. So it's just a whole mess. So that did happen before I was born. So that is my normal. That is all I know. And because it was my normal, I never really gave it too much second thought. And I don't think because of that, it's always molded me to be like a natural born caregiver, if you will. And I've always found opportunities to look out for underdogs. But I didn't realize at the time that's what I was doing until a little bit like in middle school and high school, when I was specifically introduced to some individuals with particular developmental disabilities that I kind of put some pieces together in my life and realized, like, oh, don't be shy to interact with people with disabilities. I going out into the community with my individuals, it comes back to a lot of, like, I guess, like non-exposure, and I think it intimidates people sometimes to interact with them. I think they overthink it, and they don't want to seem like, oh, should I offer help, or he's gonna think he can't do it himself, or should I talk to him? How do I approach you? What will I talk to you about? Like, I think they just overthink it, and they're people just like us, and they crave connection and interaction, and some of them are I can't, not all adults, not to categorize them like they're a cartoon character, they're like this cute little thing. They aren't individuals, and they have personalities, like distinct personalities, but for the most part they're very welcoming, and they don't judge, and they're very eager to engage with anyone, and nice to me. And it doesn't hurt to just ask. Don't assume and go ahead and do something for them, but it doesn't hurt. It's helpful to say, oh, hey, you're wheeling your wheelchair. Maybe you want someone to open the door for you. May I? Or, okay, you got that. Okay. Like, we overthink it. It can be intimidating, I feel. But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And so what websites or what places can people go to in order to get more knowledge?
They can definitely check. The WOW Center has Instagram, a website, Facebook, and also Pucho and Pals has Instagram, Facebook, and a website. So the WOW Center's website is wowcentermiami.org. And their Instagram and Facebook handles are also WOW Center Miami. Well, for Facebook, it's the WOW Center.
Okay.
And for the PALS, our website is called palsdevelopment.org. And our Instagram and Facebook is Pucho and Pals. And for Instagram, it's all together.
Thank you, Salo, for sharing that. Those are important tools and resources that anyone who wants to learn more about your company, Pucho and Pals, or learn about the WOW Center can access. I wanted to end the podcast on a very touchy note. I recently read the book called Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. And essentially it's about this woman in her 20s finding herself and realizing that she didn't need necessarily a man's love. She always had love there through her best friends. And so she has this excerpt about her best friend named Farley, who she's known since she was like 12. And you and I have known each other since we were 6 years old. So I wanted to read this excerpt for you. And essentially, this is how it goes. She says, I thought of how I'd only fallen more and more in love with her the older we grew and the more experiences we had. I thought about how excited I always am to tell her about a good piece of news or get her view when a crisis happens. How she's still my favorite person to go dancing with. How her value increased the more history we shared together, like a beautiful, precious work of art hanging in my living room. The familiarity and security and sense of calm that her love bathed me in. All this time I had been led to believe that my value in a relationship was my sexuality, which was why I always behaved like some sort of cartoon nymphomaniac. I hadn't ever thought of a man could love me in the same way my friends love me, that I could love a man with the same commitment and care with which I loved them. Maybe all this time I had been in a great marriage without even realizing. Maybe Farley was what a good relationship felt like. This specific excerpt and novel really resonated with me because that is how I feel about you, Salo. I'm so proud of the woman you've become, of the business you started, and all the good you're doing in the world. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, and hopefully we can do this again for episode 2.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful being your guest.
I love you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. That was Sueltalo with Sardinas.